South of Midnight is such a curious game to talk about. In many ways, it reminds me of a PS2 era game. There is a lot of familiarity here, and it is caked with a massive amount of beauty and style. It's given me a lot to think about. Many themes of its story are dark and very mature. Its gameplay, whilst familiar, has its own subtle charm. Combine that with its amazing art style, and South of Midnight really stands out. After spending almost 9 hours with my playthrough, I wanted to answer some questions in today's video. What are my biggest highlights? Was my time with the game worth it? And is South of Midnight any good? Here is my experience. I think the biggest part that sold me on South of Midnight was the story. The game begins with a brief intro into Haints, who are evil spirits that feed off a lot of the bad in the world, most specifically pain, and the Weavers, who are tasked with ridding them and restoring peace to the spirits. This introduces us to Hazel, our main protagonist. Due to some extreme circumstances, she finds out she's a Weaver, and most of her journey throughout the game is following the trail of her mother, who was swept away in their trailer home thanks to a hurricane. The intro does a pretty good job of establishing the relationship between both mother and daughter. There is tension and history, but there is also a younger naivety to Hazel. Having this setup allows us to understand clearly the motivations for the rest of the game. The initial setup though, the adventure goes into full flow. The rest of the game is Hazel understanding how to become a Weaver and also searching for her mother. She is taught this by one of the key characters in the game, one of my personal favorites, the Catfish. The whole point of Weavers in the world is to untangle stigmas. Stigmas are pain that has gone rotten, which brings about Haints to feed off that pain. They serve as the enemies for the game, but stigmas aren't just a gameplay tool. They are a key story point because they dive into many heavy themes around pain. And it's not just your run-of-the-mill, ow, I got a boo-boo type pain. No, it focuses on some really deep stuff here. Personal pain and trauma, murder, loss, betrayal, child abuse, the death of a child, bullying, societal bullying, isolation, some very, very mature themes. These aren't exactly the topics that you would bring up at the dinner table, but it engaged me as a player because not only was I able to relate things to my own personal experiences, but Hazel was experiencing them with me and relating it to her own situation to make sense of everything. We get an insight into the very cruel reality of the world. Oftentimes, there is no happy ending to the story, and South of Midnight does a really good job of showcasing that. I also like that a lot of these moments are narrated by Catfish's southern twang, like narrating along with the stories, and I think it really adds to it, and he also talks quite a lot when there's these transition moments between chapters. I also like the way that the game has us capturing these untangled memories, this pain in a bottle, and then hanging them on a tree in the Weave realm. It kind of flips the quote-unquote stigma on bottling everything up, and this time taking the good things and trying to keep hold of them. South of Midnight is certainly dark in its themes, but it certainly doesn't lack character in its story. Each character we meet has their own personality which matches the world, but each of them also has their own front, things that they are hiding, their own personal pain that we are able to discover and see them in a different light. And it's not just direct storytelling of that plays a part here. The deepness of all the characters is shown through musical notes that are played throughout the game. The developers have really taken time to craft great musical pieces to accompany the crescendo of a story beat or enhance a gameplay sequence, and that is something I appreciate a lot, and it's so damn awesome. There are a lot of southern hallmarks in the music which make it stand out, especially one being these kids singing in the background as like this chorus that kind of swells. There's banjos and pianos that are played together and reminds me a lot of blues music at times. And I would often play the game slower so I could hear what the lyrics were, and it is in relation to what you have just done, which I also appreciate as well. It enhances the story and it enhances gameplay. Music and story are merged together here, and it is wonderful. The only gripe I have is that the end of the game lacks a little bit of punch due to the combat challenge, and I feel it could have gone on maybe one more chapter to really seal the deal on the conclusion. But the narrative elements are wonderful, and I come away thoroughly enjoying what I had experienced. And if you take anything away from this game, then it's 100% playing it for the story. But the story isn't the only thing I took away from this game. It's the exceptional visual style. When I first saw South of Midnight when it was initially announced, the main thing you notice is the unique art style. From top to bottom, I adored what this game does visually. Its animation style is so great in cutscenes because it reminds me a lot of pieces of media that I love as well. Arcane, Into the Spider-Verse, Coraline, the Aardman films, maybe even Tim Burton's animation films as well. It's this fluid stop motion, and that's also in gameplay, not just in the cutscenes, in the way Hazel moves and the way that certain characters move. It's just different, and it fits the game perfectly because this world isn't realistic. It's a bit of weird, it's a bit of fantastical elements meshed together. It's a bit of folklore as well. It's unsettling at times when you see certain bosses or characters because they just look weird and different, and that's part of the world that Compulsion has built. There is a clear artistic vision that Compulsion has set out to achieve, and I would say it's been executed exceptionally. Right from the start of the game at chapter 1 all the way through until chapter 14, there is always something you had to stop and marvel at. Wide environmental spaces that filled with light and beauty that I would slowly walk through just to see everything for a moment. It's absolutely criminal that there was no photo mode added to this game. Even the small details like crocodiles swimming through the bogs, or billboards that are half torn up, or specific bricks that are floating in the air in certain parts of the game. Like, just the really small details that I noticed. And there are even smaller, hidden away animals that have their own homes, especially when you explore with one of our support characters, Crouton. I'm a very bright and vibrant color type of person, so it's weird to me that this world hasn't got a lot of color to it, but it feels great in the sense of it's like these dark grays and browns, and they're kind of drab, but they pop more in this game. I don't know whether it's the art style that's doing it, but they also pop a little bit more because of the white weaving abilities that Hazel has. A lot of the design in this game is built into gameplay, such as environmental storytelling and also environmental gameplay, which can be a detriment at times, but I appreciate this because they're trying to make one cohesive vision of a game, which makes it better rather than them feeling a little bit abstract to one another. Story, art style, music. These are the three key elements that made me really enjoy South of Midnight, but let's talk about some of the weaker parts of the game. I said at the start of the video that this game gives me massive PS2 era vibes, and I say that as a compliment and as a criticism. Its gameplay structure is quite linear, following a platforming to combat encounter style rhythm with story blended in. Platforming is a weird thing to talk about because although this game doesn't do anything bad, it somehow feels clunky in spots. A lot of the platforming is built into the world itself, which isn't a problem until you start climbing on specific things, and it doesn't move or flow the way I would particularly like it to. However, moving and jumping around feels completely fine, and I relate this back to PS2 era games because they also had those issues as well. It is very simple, but it does step itself up when you have these certain chase sequences where it ties all the moves that you've learnt together. This would usually happen when you're collecting all of the stigmas in an area. You would go into the weave world, and then you would essentially like get to this tree that you needed to go to. This was kind of where it stepped itself up. Unfortunately, none of this is really challenging at all, and maybe that was intentional, but the feeling that I have coming away from the platforming part of South of Midnight is that it's just fine. You have to gauge with it quite a lot when you're trying to find floofs in the world, which is one of like the upgrade materials, but outside of that, it's just fine. By far the weakest area of the game is combat though, for a number of reasons. Firstly, the combat once again is just fine. its core issue is that the encounter design really doesn't change in the entire 8 to 9 hours of play. It's usually an arena area with a few enemies that will spawn. Over the course of the game, there'll be more enemy variants that are added in to kind of give you a little bit more challenge, but it's the same basic structure. Go to an arena, kill everything, move on. It becomes quite repetitive after a couple of hours, despite the attempts to expand the combat with the upgrade path. Most of what you'll be doing in combat is spamming one button with a few bumper options thrown in, such as stunning an enemy or pushing or pulling an enemy with your weave abilities, an AoE attack, or the ability to take over another Haint's body with Crouton, who will help you with exploring as well, but in combat that's his primary use. It reminds me a lot of PS2 era games because it has this linear combat progression and this linear upgrade system, and the encounter design is kind of the same as well. As I say, it's not bad that it's simple. If the game had been any longer though, I feel like it would have dragged the experience down more than it has. I often feel like it was mainly a tool to kind of fit around the story. That would be one of the major selling points of the game, that the story is what pulls you in, not the combat. There are a few boss fights scattered in here and there, which aren't bad, but have simple mechanics and they aren't anything really to write home about. I think the game maybe would have benefited having some puzzles that could have switched up the game a little bit more between the combat encounters, but sadly there really wasn't anything here, and I think the combat did hinder the ending for me a little bit as well. After saying all of that though, we have now reached the all-important question answering time. It's clear what my biggest highlights of the game were, so there's no really need to answer that question. It's the story, it's the art style, it's the music. But I did ask, is South of Midnight any good? And was my time with the game worth it? South of Midnight invokes so much curiosity from the player in terms of its narrative, which I particularly enjoyed, and it feels like a PS2 era game in its linear nature, but it's packaged extremely well. A well-executed artistic vision and a fantastic narrative, and it's full of a lot of heart and emotion. I think its key areas is what makes the game good, but its weaker areas stop it from truly becoming an incredible game. My time with the game was definitely worth it, and I didn't feel like at any point I was wasting time, which is in this game's favor. As for my final verdict, if you're looking for a story-driven game with a mature narrative, fantastic visuals, with a decent adventure thrown in, then I can recommend that you check out South of Midnight. And if you are on the fence about this game, you can always pick it up on Game Pass or wait for a sale because it's only $40 on Steam, which isn't too bad. Hopefully this video has been informative and helpful, and if it has, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel for more content, and as always, this has been Jimbo, and I'll see you guys next time.